Welcome to the Swine Nutrition Black Belt Podcast, the latest swine nutrition research digested for you. My name is Clayton Chastain, your host for today's episode. Today I have with me Dr. Grace Elijah. She received her DVM from Kansas State and is now working toward her PhD. So Dr. Elijah, do you mind telling me a little bit about the study that you conducted?
Absolutely. So it's a research report through Kansas State's Research and Extension that we released for Swine Day this past fall. And it's titled Quantification of Semi-Truck Cab Decontamination. We originally looked into this project because we had some data that we have published looking at ASF or African swine fever contamination within a production system and how truck cabs were kind of always popping positive for ASF. And so, kind of going off Laura Grainer's work too, looking at foot pedals within a production or feed mill that were always positive for PEDV, we kind of wanted to evaluate commercially available disinfectants and application methods to see if we could get as good decontamination within a truck cab as we do similarly in our trailers. So how we did this was we actually have life-size semi-truck cabs that we bought through a salvage yard in Beloit, Kansas, and we brought them into the OH Cruise Feed Technology Innovation Center, and we have a feed science research center that is a BSL-2 lab. And how we did this was we took little coupons, we call them, but they're just little tiny squares, 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters of plastic, fabric, and rubber. And we would inoculate those with porcine epidemic diarrhea virus or porcine reproductive and respiratory syndrome virus. And we would put those coupons in the truck cab, and then we would apply a disinfectant treatment. And we landed on 7 or 8 different treatments, excuse me. It was a lot. We randomly applied them to each truck cab, but we had 3 replicates. So one was just no disinfectant at all. Just let them sit in there for 15 minutes and then swab. And then the second one was we used a hurricane fumigation application, and we ran either Synergize or intervention through. Then we looked at pump sprayer application because that's quite popular too. And we used, again, intervention and Synergize, but we also used a 10% bleach. Then after that, we evaluated just a 10-hour downtime period. So those coupons would sit within 10 hours in that truck cab. And then we found a new product. It was through a company called Procure. It's their gaseous fumigation application. It's a chlorine dioxide water-based that you, in talking with the company, we let it sit for 10 hours. So at night, we would come in and put one cab, the 10-hour downtime with no chemical treatment, and then we would put the gaseous fumigation in the other. And then we ran those through a PCR reaction and got cycle threshold values or CT values. And that's ultimately what we based off our results off first for this data. It's not, there is a limitation with PCR. There's an infectivity piece. We don't really know for sure, but we are in the talks of planning a bioassay to fully complete this research report. So.
Gotcha. And so what did you really see from these? Was one disinfectant strategy better than the other, or certain types of fabric easier to disinfect than the others? Or
It really wasn't conclusive on anything, which is kind of the beauty of it, but also the downside, because walking away from this, we thought we would be able to have some solid recommendations, but ultimately we didn't. I will say that our fabric surfaces tended to have a higher CT value, so less RNA detected from PEDV and PRRS, but the limitation there is like how much of that was just our sampling method, because we did environmentally swab that fabric and that fabric absorbing that virus and disinfectant. But it was really interesting because we thought for sure rubber and plastic would have higher CT values, but coming out of it, it was not what we saw statistically. And it was really interesting. So further highlighting the importance of that bioassay piece to determine infectivity, kind of look at like how we interpret CT value and with these disinfectants and infectivity piece as well. So.
Gotcha. So from what I saw from the results, it seemed like the fabric and rubber were actually the easiest to disinfect and the plastic was the hardest,
Right.
which surprised me because I figured like the least porous thing would be the
Right.
easiest to disinfect there. So why do you think that is?
I think too, so before we even started this, we standardized all of our disinfectant. And so what I did was I had litmus paper the same size as what would be our surface coupons. And so we actually chose the dashboard as our plastic. And so maybe accessibility, like, because rubber was down on the floor and fabric was right there. And so when we're thinking about how we standardize our disinfectant protocols for this study, the application was like right there, I guess, in a sense, for the fabric and the rubber. And that dash is angled too. So maybe that plays a part into it. It's hard to say, but we did the best with what we thought we could.
Hmm.
So that might play a piece into it. But it's really hard to look at it now because I'm waiting on that bioassay piece to make some true conclusions from
Right.
this data.
So I guess we are kind of waiting on that last piece. But since none of the results were very conclusive, what do you think the next steps are for this?
I think there's one piece though that really highlighted that we didn't really get a sterilizing effect. So further highlighting that bioexclusion is the best practice. But I think too, just applying a disinfectant to that truck cab is probably a next step and making sure that's standardized. But definitely, there are some important pieces that we learned, but there's still work to do with a bioassay for this work. So.
All right. Well, before we finish up, is there anything else you would like to add about the study?
No, but thank you guys for having me today.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show. And for everyone else, thank you for listening to the Swine Nutrition Black Belt podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast channel so you won't miss out on the latest episode. See you next week. Hey everyone, we're always searching for the latest and greatest research to share each week. If you have a swine nutrition related research trial and would like to come on the show to talk about it and share with us, feel free to send an email to nutritionblackbelt@swineit.com and we would love to take a look at your research.